Whoops, made 2 of them. Alrighty, sorry, I'm ready.
Alright.
Alrighty, so I got this setup open. Hi, Zach.
Hey, what's up?
We are doing a walkthrough through Git, getting it set up.
Okay, cool.
Alrighty. Okay, so you chose OpenSSH. It'll do a quick extraction of the files.
There's a few options.
Oh, do you know how to stream your screen?
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that so I can see what your options are. Apparently, since I have it all the way installed already, it's just going to instantly complete the install for me without all the other options. Alright, I'm coming in. You may have to choose a different monitor for your stream.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry, my Discord.
You're good. Oops, I'm clicking too many buttons.
Is there a way I can stream my entire screen?
Yeah, so when you go to the the Go Live button, up top there's a tab for applications and screens. You just choose screens.
Okay. Alright, I'm going live.
Perfect. Alrighty, now I can see you.
Alright, you can see this?
Yep.
Alright, so the next page, this is what you talked about.
Yep.
But
Okay.
page,
So this is asking you how you want to use Git. So you can use it from the command line and also from third-party software. So what that means is you could use it from the CMD built into Windows. Oh, somebody's echoing. Thank you, Jackie. You can use it from Windows, and you can also use it from Git Bash, which is like a third-party command prompt. So I'd leave it on the option that it's on.
Okay. Then this is what you wanted?
Yep.
Alright.
Okay, so this is where things get a little weird. I always choose the bottom option. Basically, what it means is like when you're programming, you have different line endings. You know, like the \n for new lines.
Yeah.
On different operating systems, it does it different. So if you do it on this option, it just won't touch them for you.
Alright. Keep that the same?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything
Good to go.
Alright. Thank you.
No problem.
Should I end the live now?
Sure. Oh, did I not go live on YouTube? It says I'm live, Zach. I think I created a duplicate stream and it didn't close the other one. It like aired out on the other one. I will be keeping the stream that I posted in the Discord open. So if you guys have any questions, you can just put them in that stream chat so I can leave that open and I'll have to look at multiple different Discord channels.
Alright. Alright.
So from what I gather, there's people that have questions in multiple languages. As of right now, the first thing that we're going over, thanks to Adam, is Git, and that will be useful for every language. So once you get that downloaded, you should just be able to hit the Windows key and type in Git, and you'll see Git Bash.
Yeah, I launched it.
Perfect. If you use the Windows key plus the up arrow, it'll blow it up and maximize it to your screen. And then if you use the Control and the plus key, it will increase the size of the text so it makes it more readable.
Okay, that works.
Alrighty, so when you first get in here, if you haven't used any sort of command line at all, it's going to look a little funky to you. So what you'll see first is in green, can you see my stream, by the way?
No, you're not live.
On YouTube?
Oh, on YouTube.
I posted a YouTube link in
I
general.
see it perfectly. You're on Git
Perfect.
Bash, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I posted in the general channel, Adam.
Alright, yeah, I see it.
Video and audio is not synced.
Does YouTube have any buffer or delay on it, or no?
It's on normal latency. Do I stop it and change it to low latency? Because I feel like that
If
might.
this is terminal, I don't mind if it's low latency.
Yeah, it's only for you guys watching the stream and you guys in the Discord channel. If you're watching just the YouTube video, everything should be in sync. So, like, for people that aren't in the Discord looking at this, when they go back and watch the video, everything should be in sync.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the Discord and the.
Yeah. So I'll try and go a little bit slow so that way you guys can catch back up. I think it should be like 4 or 5 seconds behind. Okay, so when you launch Git Bash, what you'll see the first thing you'll see in green is the name of your PC. So you'll see my user ambid and then the name of the machine, which is just default to Windows. The name of your terminal or the type of bash that you're using. This is a Windows command prompt add-on that allows you to basically use Linux-based commands. And then the tilde is your current directory. The $ just shows you which line you're currently able to run a command on. So I can just if I do ls, that stands for list structure, something like that. It basically lists out all the current directory, the subdirectories. So if I go to this PC, C users, my user, you'll see that all these folders in the my user folder correspond to what we just listed out here.
1 second. I'm waiting for the stream to.
You're good. It will look a little different because this is showing hidden files. So if I unshow hidden files and refresh, actually we can just do an ls-a to show all, and that will show all of the dot files. So you'll have to go. I would recommend googling some terminal-based commands, and that will help you out on both Linux and Windows, because this is emulating what it's like to operate a command line on Linux.
Okay.
Just make sure to add the link. Oh, I didn't know if I was allowed to post an announcements, Game God. Thanks for the tip. I'm gonna avoid announcements until the owner of the Discord says I'm allowed to. I am by no means affiliated with the Runtime Terror Discord. I found out about it, saw everybody had a bunch of questions and wanted to help you guys, so.
Okay.
You're a saint. I love you.
In the description of the YouTube video, sorry for the shameless self-plug, but Leaf that's in here with me is one of the community managers of oneleif. Him and I own a nonprofit where we get people on open source projects and you can learn things together. So if you don't have a project and you're looking for one, or you have a project and you're looking to bring people onto it, we kind of help facilitate that.
Okay.
Cool. Is there a way that I can get this link maybe like in the chat for the, I think it's Git Bash that you're using? Is that what you said?
The link to Git Bash?
Yeah. Is that in there?
It is not.
If not, I mean,
I figured,
Google it.
yeah, you can just Google Git Bash and it'll be git-scm.com.
Yeah, I still
Cool.
have it up. I'll paste it.
Sweet. Okay, so a general background of how Git works. Git is a delta-based versioning control system. What delta means is, from physics, delta means change. So basically what it does is, like, let's say I have a repository. We can just pull up one of mine so I can give you an example of how it looks. You can go to different websites to manage your Git repository. My favorite personal one is GitHub. There's other ones like GitLab, and you'll see completely separate versioning control systems like Microsoft's Azure DevOps, Perforce, Subversion. You'll tend to find that the majority of enterprise level people tend to stick either in the Atlassian bucket, which means you use Git Bitbucket for your coding, or and Bitbucket is just a different interface for using Git, right? GitHub is just an interface that allows you to use Git with their servers, right? So if I go into the game project that I posted earlier, you can see if we go into commits, a commit is just a we'll explain how that works later, but I just want to show you what happens when you go look at one of these. Basically what it does is you can see in red the lines that were deleted and in green the lines that were created, right? So this is really what Git does for you. It allows you to take the changes that you've been working on and push them up to a server, so that way if your computer crashes, they're up on somebody else's cloud-based server and they're backed up, right? And it also allows you to go back and look at each individual set of changes, right? So if you're working on a big team, right, you want to know, oh, okay, something broke. Let me go back a couple versions and see who touched this thing and see what they touched. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, and so you can like document.
Exactly. Yeah. So the first thing that you'll want to start out doing is go ahead and log into GitHub, make yourself an account. I'll walk you guys through making a new repository and getting it onto your computer. So if we go to repositories, I guess we'll start from the homepage. So if you just go to the homepage, you can click on in the top right your little avatar, and for anybody following along at home, I will wait a couple seconds and see if anybody has any questions in the stream. Are you familiar with BFS and DFS? BFS is breadth first stream, and DFS is depth first stream. Or search, sorry.
Not.
What were you saying, Adam?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Sam Y asked it in the stream chat. I was answering questions. I'm gonna be there's a stream chat open in YouTube that I'll be following to watch your guys' questions. So let's pull open. I don't know. While we're waiting for everybody to get caught up on making a GitHub account and getting Git downloaded, for those that are following along, breadth first and depth first search. So this is based on tree structures. This is an algorithm that operates on a data structure. The data structure that you operate on with searching with this type of searching algorithm is a tree. So you have some sort of node, some sort of connection that goes to other nodes, right? So a depth first search versus a breadth first search, I would go all the way down to the bottom and search, whereas a breadth first search, I would search each child node first. There's a lot of great YouTube videos out on this, but that's the very core principle of it. Okay, so are you caught up and have a GitHub account and whatnot?
Yeah.
I'm kind of using you as my guinea pig to know how fast people are going. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create a new repository. And a repository just means this is a place that you hold your code. A repository also holds a wiki relative to that code, a project board where you can track tasks relative to that code, as well as issues with your code. So we can go ahead and just make a repository name. If you're going to be doing open source work, I recommend taking a few seconds to think about your repository name if it's going to be anything other than just a personal project, because you want the name to make sense. So in this case, we will just I'm actually going to create this repository under not my name, but I'm going to create it under oneleif, which is the organization that Zach and I operate out of. That way, this repository can be referenced in the future. But you can leave your name. So we'll just call this repository Git Getting Started, and then you can provide a description. So just be like this repository is a test for teaching Git fundamentals. I'd recommend leaving it public. There's no reason to make a private one unless you're planning on making money off of it, and even then, you're not going to worry about that until you're deep into development. I'd always recommend initializing with a Readme. Basically, what this is it's like a first front page whenever you get to a repository that kind of explains what the repository is. You can add a git ignore, which basically says when I push up my changes and say, here's all my new changes, what file types do I want to ignore? So like if you're in Java and you build up some jars, you don't want to put those out on the out on the server, because you can build those yourself. Those are kind of extraneous and they make looking through all the files that have changed kind of awkward. We're not going to do one right now, but we can go through that in the future. And the last thing that you can add is a license, and this would basically say like, you can use my code, but here's the stipulations. Either you can't be a for-profit company, or if you're going to use our code, you have to reference that you used our code in some way. I'm not going to worry about it right now. The most common one is probably the MIT license. So then you go ahead and hit create. And what this does is GitHub has this server that automatically creates this repository for you. It holds your code, it holds your issues, which would be like the bugs and whatnot. It holds a project board, which will be used to track tasks, and a wiki, as well as several other things that are probably a little bit too deep to get into right now. So you can see the code that it starts out with. The two files that we start out with are a license, which is just the MIT license. If you click on it, you can see it grants permission to use this code free of charge. And then it initializes it with a Readme, which is just this file down here. If you open it up, it's just the file extension is a .md, which is Markdown. So if I hit the edit button here, you can just see that a hashtag corresponds to like a header, and like a dash would correspond to a bullet point. You can look up Git Markdown. We're not going to get too into that. So just to get your code to be able to be used on GitHub, what you have to do is, now that you have this repository, you have to click this clone button. You want to copy the URL, and you can see it's basically just github.com/your username and then / the name of the repository .git. And then you will open up your Git bash. You will type in, or you will go to the directory that you like to store your code in. For me, I like to go to Documents, Coding, and this is where I store all my projects. And then what you would do is you type in git space clone and then paste that link in Windows. To paste in the Git bash, it is shift plus insert. Why they do that baffles me. I have literally no idea. Okay, so now you can see if I list all the folders, we have the Git getting started folder. And if I CD is to change directory, so if I just hit tab, you can see it lists out all the things that I could do. If I type G and then hit tab, it'll auto-complete because that's the only thing starting with a G. And now you can see the folder that I'm in is in tilde is just my root, so like my user. So I'm in Documents, Coding, Git getting started. And now if I do an ls to list the files, you can see I have the same thing that GitHub has, a license and a README. Just to show you that this is how it works. Boom. Basically what we did is we took the code that was up on the server and we copied it down to our machine, and now we have a local copy of it, right? I'm gonna let the stream catch up so that way Adam could be my guinea pig here.
Yeah.
At this point, how important is like file structure? For example, like if you're setting all this stuff up, do you care about that at this point, or is that something that you like take a little bit of time to plan out later? For like, I don't know, obviously going to be different for different projects, but just curious.
When you're just creating the Git repository?
Yeah.
So when you initially create it, all you're gonna have is a license and a README, right?
Okay.
So what you would do is you'd go into, okay, so now you can see I have 2 commits, right? So you have the original commit, which will happen with any repository, and that you can see it has my license and my README, and it shows you the lines that were added. And then for the second commit, you can see I changed the README and I added that bullet point, right? So you can do it. You can do it that way, or you could go ahead and create the project, do everything on whatever you're going to be using, whether you're using Eclipse or Notepad or whatever, and then you could just copy. You can see when I pulled that repository down, if I go to Documents, Coding, Git getting started, you can see all my stuff is here, and it has this magical little .git folder that tracks all the objects, logs, all that jazz for me.
Okay.
So I could just go in here and I could just create my project in this folder, right? So if I were to go, I want this to be language agnostic. I know some of you are Java, some of you are Python, so I'm just going to do it in a language that everybody can use. I'm just going to do, I don't know, HTML, I guess. So we'll just open up Notepad++ because it is like the easiest thing to use. Don't mind my note taking. We'll just say HTML and HTML. Why I chose HTML, I don't know. It's just the easiest thing. And I don't know, we'll just put in a paragraph and say ASDF. So now if I hit save, I'm going to go save it to that folder. Coding, getting started. And we'll say, I don't know, test HTML page. And then we'll change the file type to HTML. And then boom, you can, Notepad++ recognizes it's HTML, so it colors it. And now if we go into here, you can see our test HTML page is in there. If you wanted, you could right click and open it with whatever your favorite browser is and see that it prints out poorly formatted HTML and doesn't work because I don't know HTML very well. But what's nice about this now is that now you can go see what was changed. If you do a Git Status, now that you've made any changes, whatever you're doing your changes in, you have to save the files. But if I do a Git Status, you can see we're on the branch master. My branch is up to date with origin master, origin being the server that we pulled the code from. In this case, it's GitHub. Untracked files, meaning files that Git doesn't care about, typically due to a Git ignore, but in this case, I'm not actually sure why. But you can see this is the file that was changed, my test HTML page. And it says, we don't have anything to commit, but there are files present that we could change. Now, before I get into how exactly, or before we get into actually like using the command line to do this, I'm going to open up Paint and just kind of show you guys a visual representation of how Git works. This is one of my favorite things to do here. So we're gonna, I want to increase the size of my paintbrush. Oh, I guess it's big enough. Okay, so you can see on GitHub, we have this master branch thing, right? So typically the way that larger scale projects work, we're going to put this line here, and this is going to be our pretend timeline, right? So we have our initial commit where we created our README and license. We have that second commit where I edited the README, right? And this is all on the, I'm going to do M for master branch. Normally what would happen on any decently sized project, as soon as you hit this point, you would branch off of master, right? So that means we take the code that's at this point in time and we branch it off to a point where we can touch it and do things on it, right? And this branch, 95% of the time, is called dev, develop, or development, one of the three. And so when we branch off of here, basically what that means is this timeline is now separate from the other one, right? So what that allows me to do is I can do all of my development on this branch. So I can make a commit here, and make changes. And then when I'm done, and we're at version 1, we'd merge that back into master. If you think about the naming convention, master is where all the like releases should be, right? That way you have one branch that's clean that you can just go see, you know, we're at V1, V2, V3, whatever. Okay, so what's not clean about that? Oh, develop. Now you're doing everything on the develop branch. That doesn't quite make sense. Let's modify this structure. So now that we're at develop, let's say we're working on, I don't know, a website. And the first thing you have to do is go add a button. So we will branch off of develop, and we'll call this feature/button. I'm awful at using Paint, so I'm not going to type it all out, but we'll abbreviate. And then on this feature/button, you create the HTML page in that commit, you create the button in that commit, and then you do some code cleanup in this commit. And then you merge this into development. And now you have this one point in time when you merge it in that is corresponding to these three commits. And don't worry if you're getting lost, we will kind of walk through how all this works in the actual code itself. I just want to give you a visual representation of what's going on. So the nice part about this is at the same time, let's say developer number 2 is working on something as well. He's working on feature/image. And I just say feature/ because that's just a naming convention for branches that I see is very common. So he does the same thing. He creates some commits and then he merges it into development. But he merged it in first. So if I go looked at the development branch, you'd see these two commits in order, right? Depending on when you merge them back in. Merging just means I take this timeline and I pretend I'm SpongeBob and I just move it over here. Okay, so now that you have a very crude understanding of how this works, we will go ahead and do this in practice. Ooh. What's that?
The YouTube video. Yeah,
The YouTube video is what? Sorry, you're cutting out.
the YouTube video is a little bit behind.
Oh, sorry. I will wait just a second before we move on.
Yeah, it's showing. All right, yeah, the two branches merging the developer.
Yep. Okay. Man, that is probably 10, 15 seconds behind. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. So I did this Git status thing, and that shows me the current status of my repository. And this shows me basically what files have been changed since the last time I've made a commit, or I bundled up my code and says this is one thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Git Add, and what this will do, I will do another Git status, and you'll see now it's green, right? So we have these two areas, right? We have this area of you've changed files, but you don't know what you want to do with them yet, and then you have this staging area. So you can see I could do git restore -- staged and then the name of the file to unstage the file. So basically what you do is like, if we were to just go make another file, I don't know, I'll just throw something in here and make it a text document. Now if we do a git status, you can see I have a file that I've said this is what I want to commit in my next commit, and this file is, we don't know what we want to do with it yet. We're just going to kind of leave it in the staging area. So now if I do a git commit, if I were to just hit enter, it would pop open to an editor that you guys probably aren't familiar with, Vim. You can actually choose to open it in Notepad++, so we can do that. You can choose which editor you wanted to open up in. You can just Google like git default editor or something along those lines to get some sort of notepad to be it. So this is the hashtags are just comments. So this is just in comment form saying what the current status of your Git repository is. So I just when I do commit, what this is telling me to do is it's telling me to make some sort of commit message. You can see up here we have this temporary file all the way up in the top. It's called commit_edit message. So really, this is like a temporary file that when we're done with this, that we'll push this file up and it'll say, okay, these are the things that you've committed. So we'll type in some sort of commit message. You want these to be self-explanatory. So mine will just be added a test HTML page. And then if you hit save and you exit, you can see one file was changed and you have create mode. So we created that commit, right? So now if we do a git status, you can see my branch, my local branch on my machine is ahead of master by one commit because we made one, right? But we haven't told GitHub or the servers that GitHub owns that we changed this thing, right? It's just on my machine. And Git recognizes that because it knows that there's a difference in the number of commits, right? So if I do, I'm trying to press this fact a little bit forward. If we do a git log, this will show us the list of commits, which is going to look a little funky. So you can see the name of the commit. So the first commit that it goes in reverse order. So like the top commit is the latest one, and this is the oldest one. So you can see our first one is the initial, then we have a readme, and then we have our added a test HTML page. It gives you a date for each commit, the author, so you can see my name, and then the user correlating to GitHub. And then each commit has a specific hash or just like a randomly generated number and letter combination. So that way we can refer to this thing in the past. I could show you how that works later. And then you can see the head of our Git pointer is moving forward one on the master branch. So, yeah, go ahead.
My bad. So how do I leave the commit screen? So I committed it and.
Oh, you're on the Vim editor.
Yeah.
You have to hit escape.
Okay.
And then shift colon. So you want regular colon, not semicolon. And then the letter Q, and then hit enter. This is VI or Vi or Vim, one of the text editors that's native to Linux. So it's a little bit janky to get used to, but once you get used to it, it has a lot of useful commands. So it's :Q for quit.
Okay.
I could change my default text editor. I think it's git config -- global. Core editor. There we go. I think if I... Zach, do you know if I just delete what's in the core editor, it'll default to Vi?
1 sec, I'm trying to wait for the stream to catch up.
No, we'll Google it so we're on the same page as Adam here, because everybody else is going to run into this issue.
Yeah, might as well.
Git config core editor. I just want default. So this is the basic client configuration. When you first start, before you push to a repository, you'll have to configure your user and email. Otherwise, Git will be like, who is trying to push to me because I don't know. Because like when you want to push up to GitHub, it has to check the user and the email to make sure that they have permissions to push to this repository. So we can mock. Oh man, this is gonna be such a pain because I'm not. Man, I should just uninstalled Git. If you guys have any questions when you're going through this, just ask me. I haven't done this stuff in forever, but I can Google it and help you figure out what needs to happen. So let's just try Vi. Aha! Okay, this is the screen that you should be in. Sorry, I'll wait 15 seconds for you to show up. Or catch up. I'm gonna go catch up on chat real quick. Sorry, guys. Okay, did the stream catch up to looking at Vi? Yeah.
Yeah, you're in.
Okay, cool. So, if you start typing things without touching anything, it will execute commands, right? So like if I do D, the letter D twice, it'll delete the current line that I'm on, or if I hit U, it'll undo. If I hit the I key, you'll see down at the bottom, it says insert, and then I can start typing. If you hit
Okay.
escape, it will get out of insert mode. It'll catch up, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll get out of insert mode, and then you can see at the bottom I typed colon, and then Q. And then when I hit enter, that stands. If I didn't make any changes, you have to put the exclamation point, or if you made changes, you have to put the exclamation point, because it's like, why are you trying to quit? You haven't written your changes down yet. But let's make it easier on you and not have to use the Vi editor. You can download whatever your favorite is. I wonder if you can just use like Notepad. Yeah, you can just type in Notepad and it'll open up Notepad, which will be a lot easier for you to use. It is this command. I'll highlight it for a sec.
So do you have to save it before you quit?
Yes.
How do you do that?
In Notepad, it's just Control S.
No, I'm on the other one.
Oh, Vi.
Yeah, Vi.
Instead of doing colon Q, you do colon WQ. Colon is to do a something command. W is for write. Q is for quit. So you save and quit.
Okay. Alright, that works.
All right. So now once we do our Git commit and we do a status, you'll see that we are one commit ahead. So what do? We've made our commit. Let's give it to GitHub. Somebody's microphone. Devanch, can you mute yourself, please? Ah, thank you. Whew, that was loud.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see, did you do your commit and then do a Git status and make sure it told you were ahead by a commit?
Yeah, and then I did the Git Log to see the commit.
Perfect. And then when you do a Git push, it will take that commit that's on your machine and it'll push it up to github.com. So that way GitHub is aware of it. And then let me know when you're done with that. You'll see it counts all the objects that we changed, compresses them, writes them, and then it tells you where you push them to. Did you get that working?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So once it's pushed, you can go back to GitHub, and if you refresh the page, you'll see that there's now 3 commits, and you can also see whatever you created in there.
Okay.
And then if we go into the commit, you can see what we changed. That is the absolute very basics of Git. There's a whole lot you can do with it. If you didn't like this commit, you could revert it to an old one. There's a million things you can do with Git. It gets complicated, but this is the very fundamentals that you need to know, and this is something you should be doing with all your projects, because if you drop your computer in a lake, all your code's gone, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it like this, A, you can see your changes that you've made and figure out where your bugs were, and B, your code's backed up and safe.
Okay.
The other nice part about it that I will reiterate a billion times for whoever will hear, this code is public. So now if you make anything and you were struggling with it, rather than having to like copy and paste that code into Discord or something, you can just say, hey, go to this link to this file, and they can go look at it and tell you what's wrong. Or they could just download your code and test it for themselves and figure out what's wrong, right? It makes it a lot easier for people like me to be able to help you, as well as it allows you to have a project that other people can just help on in general. Okay, so that's the introduction to Git. Um, I don't have like a timeline or anything here set up. So if anybody has any specific questions, feel free to either put them in the stream chat or at me in Discord or unmute themselves in chat.
How can we get involved with some of the stuff you guys are working on?
So Zach and I run our own Discord called oneleif. I can, if you look in, oh man, so the problem with Discord is that it's very hard not to get things like swept under the rug. Actually, I believe in the description of the stream itself, if you're watching the stream, in the description of it, there's a link to our website, oneleif.com. For those of you that didn't look at it, oneleif is spelled oneleif.com, and there's a link to this Discord in there. There's a little, you have to like put in an introduction and whatnot to get full access to the server, but in that Discord is where we can help you. I don't want to steal people from his Discord, but I also want to help you guys, so I'll leave that up to him on how he wants to handle that. But that is a place where we'd be able to help you guys. Right now, we do a few things, right? Zach and I like to mentor people like this. We have a bunch of resources that we post in our channels. We have a nice structure set up for individual interests and whatnot. We're very open to you guys' proposing changes. We also have active projects. And so how we manage active projects is we have organizational projects, so projects that oneleif itself, the organization, sponsors. So for example, that would be our website, like we're working on our website right now. We have partners with other nonprofits that we're making projects for them. So not only do you get to work on projects, but you get to give back to the nonprofit community, which is awesome. And the last thing would be personal projects. So Zach's working on an iOS framework, I'm working on a game. They're all open source, so you guys could contribute to them, right?
Cool.
Make sense?
Yep.
Perfect. Meho Kato, can you explain Git clone? So what Git clone does, if we go back to just the basic GitHub.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
What platform are you using for that Git and the command line?
Oh, Git Bash, Gitbash. If you don't want command line and you're on Windows, I'd recommend GitHub Desktop. It looks super simple, and you don't have to do any command line stuff. But I would highly, highly recommend learning the command line. While it does have a steeper learning curve, you'll get to understand Git at a more fundamental level. To answer Meho Kato's question about what Git clone does, when you go to this link and you type in Git clone and you hit enter, that runs a function on Git that copies down all of the code that you have up here, the entire repository, down to your computer. So basically, they have these files stored locally. Like if I go into my file explorer, I have them stored on my machine. But this code would be stored up on their machine. I just copy it down and put it on a folder on my machine is what it does.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, the stream's delayed, so.
No, you're fine. What other questions we got?
I got a question.
Yeah, go.
Okay, so let's say like I make some changes to the test HTML file.
Mhm.
So how would I update that with Git?
You do the same process: Git add, Git commit, Git push.
Okay.
Every time you make changes, you do that.
Okay.
Anybody else got any questions?
I think that's all for me.
Oh, hi, Allo. Go ahead. Git is one of the main things that I could think of that we could go over that would be useful to everyone. Um, Outside of Git, some things that would be useful. I'd highly recommend going to Code Wars. You've heard of Leet Code or coding exercises. If you go to the Kata tab, there's a bunch of coding exercises, and you can see all the languages that you can do them in. So these are just practice exercises. Some other things that you could do, I'd highly recommend reading Clean Code by Robert Martin. I linked it in the Discord a while ago. There's free PDFs of it online. It'll help you make your code much easier to write, read, and maintain. I'd also recommend looking up design patterns, not necessarily for OOP, but just in general. I don't know if I'd recommend this website in particular, but design patterns are great, like learning how to structure your code, what architecture to use, all that jazz. Oh, oops. ABBB, you sent me a message and asked me if I could help you. We're on stream here. Whatever you want help with, it'll probably benefit everybody else. Ozturk says, are you familiar with backend development? If so, can you share resources for learning? So for those of you who are not familiar, the terms backend and front end. Backend means you work on the server side, and the front end means you work on the user interface side. So for example, let's just go, I'm going to use the oneleif website as an example because I've played a part in how this works. So for example, okay, step one, I know this is kind of ugly. We're working on it. It's under construction. So, like this carousel, for example, this would be done in JavaScript, right? These images could be loaded from the server, right? So, like, if we didn't want to hard code these images and save them into the front end code, we could say, hey, every day go out and get whatever the latest images are in the database, and the backend would facilitate that. The front end, the UI, would make requests to the backend, and the backend would respond, giving them whatever data they requested for. I don't think the post page works. Oh, okay. It's laid out. So like on, let's say you're going like a news site or Medium or anywhere that has like posts or a blog. If you were to have posts, they wouldn't be stored in the front end code. They'd be stored in some database somewhere. The front end, whenever you click on the post or even want to load the posts on like the page that all of them look at, or that you look at all of them, the front end would make a request to the back end. The back end would say, okay, let me go grab the post from the database. Give me a sec. It would go into the database, say, okay, here's all the posts I have, and then it would send it back to the front end in some sort of format that the front end can read. The front end says, okay, you have a post. The post has, in this case, a header, and we're going to display that header, and we're going to give it a gray background in this case. You say you're also having trouble with language/framework selection. What language would you see as a future in backend development? That is a very loaded question. I don't want to say no, there is no one tool for every job, right? You can't use one hammer for every nail. That's not the right expression. Anyways, you get my point, right? There's no catch-all. Some of the more enterprise meaning for large companies, one of the more enterprise level web frameworks would be Java using Spring or Spring Boot, C# using ASP or .NET. If you want to do something more small scale and you don't have a ton of setup to do, you could look at Node.js. For our website that we're using for oneleif, we actually use Swift, which is Apple's language. And we use a web framework called Vapor, which is super nice, super easy to set up. Those are the main ones that I can think of that I would recommend that are modern and have a future. Zinjin, okay, I probably butchered your name. Recommended PHP is a great one. I personally think that one's a little outdated. It's probably not going anywhere for a while, but it is still pretty big out there. Zitbeer asked, maybe out of scope for this tutorial, but I'm mainly curious how to handle merge when the master is ahead. Let me go open Paint again. So this is a question about Git. So he's saying somehow the master branch got ahead. So we have, I don't know, let's say we have commit 1, commit 2 on master, you branch off onto development, and you're making changes here, and then, I don't know, somebody goes on the GitHub website on the master branch and, I don't know, goes and edits the Readme, and that'll make a commit, right? So you'd have this weird disparity where this guy has a commit that this branch doesn't know about yet, right? Because you branched off right here and you don't know about this commit. So what you could do is you could do a pull request, pull this guy onto this branch, so now you have this commit, and then when you merge, it would merge not only the commit that you just pulled, but all the ones behind it. Zach, do you see a better solution for that? Isn't that what we typically do?
Sorry, I was checking the.
No, you're fine. There's a billion questions right now.
Yep. Just I know the question. So really quick, I'd just say whenever there's a merge conflict trying to merge into develop or master from another branch, I just merge the branch that I want to merge into my branch. I resolve the conflicts, and then that will be a commit. And then after that, you can merge into the branch with no conflicts.
Yeah, that works. I'm not picking questions out in any particular order. Zach's watching chats as well and sending them in a private message, so I'm looking at them. Cody Wright asked, "Is Clean Code a good book for beginners?" That's a really good question. My initial instinct is no, because it covers some concepts that you want to understand. But I found the most use out of it by reading it as a very beginner, understanding maybe 10% of it, but still getting good things out of it. Going on and learning, doing some other stuff, and then coming back and rereading it again, because those concepts will when you're doing programming, you kind of have to balance the fine line between doing things theoretically and in practicality and in practice. Like if you just learn theory and never use practice, you'll never understand how to actually use things. You'll never understand how to use Git. If you just do things in practice, you'll learn how to do things based on theory, right? You'll never learn the theory of computation or the theory behind automatons, data structures, whatnot. Like anybody can go out and learn how to create an array and put integers in it, but knowing when to use an array over a list is something that you kind of have to manage through practice and learning about how the actual data structure is geared. So I would recommend reading Clean Code at any point in your level of expertise, but if you're at a low level of that expertise, I would highly recommend rereading it once you've learned a little bit, or almost keep it around as a reference. And let's say you're creating a function, you're like, oh, I don't know if this is clean. Let me go look at the book and see what they say about it. Nadir Namane. Okay, I'm gonna butcher everybody's name. I'm sorry. What language are you using for your game? I use the game engine Unity, and the language that it uses is C#. It uses a framework on top of C# called Mono that allows you to have access to mathematical functions and 3D calculations that normal C# wouldn't allow you to do. I mean, you could do it by hand, but it would take forever. I've also used Godot. I'm uncultured, so I used to call it Godot. It's a free open source engine. I'd highly recommend it because I'll always recommend open source. It's more geared towards 2D, and then the other big name in the game would be Unreal Engine, and that's more for AAA level. It has a really steep learning curve, but if you know it, you can make the best games graphically. Like you can make it look the best. I mean, you can still make a good game in Unity or Godot, sorry, but Unreal just has it's written in C++, so you can eke out every inch of performance possible. AAB or ABBB, he said, if I learn how to create a website, what language I learn it? I'm assuming you're asking what language should you learn it in. The base core languages that you learn for any website would be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML would be the content of the page, CSS would help you style it, and JavaScript would allow you to add functionality to it. Once you learn some regular JavaScript, you can go start looking at frameworks that are built up around it, like React, Angular, or Vue. If you want any links or resources to those, just ask me. Ooh, Flying Swag, beautiful question. How do I get involved in open source? I'm a beginner/intermediate Java programmer and would love to learn more. He also says that I tried looking into open source, but it's quite daunting and I don't know where to start. This is really common. I was a programmer for several years before I ever touched open source, and it was thanks to Zach that got me into it. So what open source really means, for those of you that are unaware, is whatever you're working on is public. It's for a good reason. So, for example, the game that I'm working on, while I still plan on putting it on Steam and getting it out there for people to play, and I could put I don't know, skins in it for $1 or something like that. It's not required that you pay for it, right? And you could still go look at the code. You could take some of the code out and use it in your own game, right? Open source really just means that the code is public. Anybody can help you. Okay, let's take for example Linux. Linux is an operating system, right? So you can use Windows, you can use Mac, and you can use Linux. Linux is an open source operating system. That's why there's Linux, Ubuntu, all of their children and whatnot. Okay, I feel like I got off topic. How do you get involved in it? Well, the first thing you do is you create a Git repository and you make it public, and you can just start working on your code publicly, and then one of the best ways to have people be capable of hopping onto your project is to fill out a README and explain what your project is. Actually, sorry, I feel like I'm getting off topic. I'm gonna take a step back. You can either create your own project or hop on somebody else's. I will walk through some very quick tips on how to get your project geared towards somebody being able to hop on it. Because if you're a beginner, odds are that you'll kind of have your own ideas and you want people to hop on, or you'll want to find a professional programmer and hop on their project. So you'll want to basically have a good README that explains what you're trying to do. That's the main thing. There's a lot of other things you can do, like having tickets and whatnot, but we can get into that in another stream if people have extra questions. So if you wanted to get involved in a project of ours, let's just open up the oneleif Discord, for example. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, I know we have a lot of channels, I'm sorry. We have organization projects and we have community projects. Organizational projects would be projects that oneleif itself is working on as an organization, and community projects would be projects that are owned by anyone in oneleif, right? So, for example, we have the oneleif website. We have OL Go, or oneleif Go, which is the oneleif website turned into a mobile app. We have BFTJ, which is Bread for the Journey. It's a nonprofit that we're going to be making their website. We have Swift UI Kit, which is a UI framework that Zach wrote in iOS. And then we have Bunny Hop, which is my Unity game. If you wanted to find a project, you can either message in one of these channels and ask what you can do to help, or you can go to the proposals channel and submit a proposal similar to one of the ones that are already in here, saying, here's what I'd like to do, here's what I currently have, please help me get it set up and help me get people on it. If you don't see a project that you like and you're not experienced enough to set up one of your own, I could start the project for you and kind of help you lay it out. I'm a busy guy. I got lots of things to do, so I can't guarantee that I would put a whole lot of programming time into it, but I will happily help you be a project manager on that project, and I know Zach would too. It's something that he's interested in. So those are your main three options. Can you share the links for the books? Yes. I feel like everybody's going to have this question, and I need a public place to paste them. Somebody's echoing, by the way. Test. Okay, we're good. Zach, where should I post the links to the book? I mean, if you just type in clean code in Google, it'll be like the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, I would just say it over. Just type in clean code, or if we can share it later in our Discord. I know we have tons of resources.
Yeah, and if you put in
probably in there.
If you put in PDF after the name of the book, that'll help you find a free online copy 95% of the time. Okay, back to scrolling through people's questions. Tips for how to look at an open source repo and actually understand the different folders and where I can contribute. That is a freaking great question. That is an amazing question. Okay, let's go look at some examples. Okay, we'll go look at the oneleif website. It's a public repository. Any of you guys can go get started on it. Okay, so you hop in here and you see, I have no idea what a Docker file is, what a .yml file is. I don't even know which one of these folders to get started in. Okay, great. That is a pain in the butt to get started. Step 1, ask somebody. Beating your head against a wall trying to do this stuff on your own when you're just getting started is just going to burn you out and leave you stuck, right? So step 1, before you ask questions, read what documentation they have. So for example, you can see this repository is for the API. This repository is for the backend, right? And you can see down here, if you want to get started on this project, oh, look at the wiki. So you can open up the wiki. Let me close some tabs. I got too many. So yeah, you can see we have feedback channels, so you can join the Discord, and then here's the project contents. We have the backend repository, we have the front end repository, we have the mobile, the iOS app, and the Android app, and they're each their own repository. And then over here, we have all sorts of extra stuff. So how to contribute? Oh, that'd be a great place to start, wouldn't it? We explain what open source is, how do you get started, how to fork a project. This isn't. I need to rewrite this. What do you work on? And then submitting code, right? So those are the main things that you have to ask about when you hop on a project. So lots of projects will use some form of project management or ticketing system. We just use the one built into Git. So you click on this projects tab, and then there'll be a project inside of it. And you can see in here are tickets. This would be the main way for you to be able to start helping on any project, depending on how they're set up. Some use a separate website called Trello or Jira. But if you see a projects tab or you see like issues that are open, I'd recommend contacting the owner of it and seeing what you can do. But yeah, so like for oneleif specifically, you can go into one of these tickets and you can see, okay, these are bad examples, these are complicated. Let me go to the front end. If you go to the front end, go to projects, open up the project, you can see and okay, so you have different tabs, right? So you can see we have blocked, which are tickets that can't be done yet for some reason. We have the backlog, which is tickets that need to be done. But aren't selected as high priority yet. We have to do, which are selected and are ready to go, right? So if you find something in to do that doesn't have somebody's name already on it, do it. So for example, this one says refactor the page not found view following the V1 designs, and it links to the designs. So you can go into the designs that the UI designers have made. Zach, I don't remember if they need access to this, to be honest. But yeah, you can see like our designers that we have UI designers that help us with a lot of this stuff. So us as developers, we don't need to worry about designing how things look. They design these beautiful pages for us, and we just go implement them, right? And then you can see based on the labels that the ticket has, this is for version 1 of the website. It's an enhancement, and then there'll usually be some sort of description in there, right? And this is pretty common to most ticketing systems. The things that you see here are pretty generic. It's just we may just be using a different website or application than other people use. The concepts will transfer over between them.
And I'd just like to touch on really quick that a lot of the projects that we have, like both Sabian showed the back end and the front end, that file structure is that way because it's set up because of the framework that we use.
Yeah.
So if you made a basic React app or if you made a basic Vapor backend, like you'll have the same or similar file structure for all the files.
So the reason our folder structure, for example, in the front end is this way is because this is how React sets up their folder structure. You have some sort of packages, package.json that holds your package. You have a source folder that holds your source code. Oh. You have a. I'm sorry, Peter. I have to mute you. You're echoing. You have the public folder that would hold like images and whatnot. So yeah, if you are curious about the folder structure in one of the oneleif projects specifically, you can just ask us. If you're curious about one of just some random open source project, sometimes you just have to have some background knowledge and know what framework they're using. In this case, you can see we're using React, so you could go Google React file structure and learn about it from there. Or just ask somebody. Oneleif is a great place to just ask people. Okay, I think I filtered through the majority of the questions that were had so far. Am I missing any, Zach?
I think you're Good. Here, 1 second. Going through our private messages.
Oh, ABBB said, please, what is the Node.js in hacking? I don't do hacking. I have no idea. Node.js is a framework that is used for backend development using JavaScript. The main reason that it would be used is so that the developers using JavaScript can do it for both the front end and the back end. Frank said, thanks, but your repos seem way more informative / accessible than most. Honestly, you're right. A lot of that's due to Zach pressing me to make our repositories have a lot of wikis and information and whatnot. If they aren't set up to be user friendly for you to join on the open source project, then just look for another one, man. There's so many repositories out there for you that you could help on. And at the very least, I don't know, you could. I'm assuming you could just like send a message or create like if you just go to any repository, like I don't know, if we just go to home and I find some random person's repository. And I just create an issue and say, could I get some help? I can't quite understand what's going on. That's a feasible way of going about it. Some people are really strict about how their issues are set up, but that's probably how I'd do it, unless they have like their email or something on the project, right? Those are the only ways that I can think of. You're right that it is kind of hard to get into it, but like if you were to just like see that an issue was up on their project and you think it would be like an easy fix, that might be a good way to start to show them that you want to try on it. Not all open source projects were created the same. Um, that's why Zach and I are really trying to help here because we've noticed a distinct lack of documentation in open source. People are struggling to understand not only what it is but how to get involved. So we'd love to help you guys get introduced. What other questions we got, guys?
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So is there anything else that like some basic stuff I should learn, like on the path to become a software developer, such as Git?
Ooh, actually, I have a really good resource for you. If you just
Okay.
search in whatever type of developer you want to be, let's say web developer. If you type in web developer roadmap, usually it'll be some sort of GitHub repository that opens or is the first result.
I do see one, yeah.
If you just scroll down, there'll be this gigantic roadmap of what you do. So for example, if you wanted to learn front end, you'd start with the internet. How does the internet work? What is HTTP? Then you go down, you learn HTTP. Ooh, that was loud. Hello.
If I learn into of code and how the book I started with them.
Could you repeat that?
You said because you said we read a clean book to learn about coding general.
Clean code would be used to write better code, not to learn how to write code. If that was your question. But yeah, Adam, to answer your question, to finish answering your question, if you have a typically this is
Because I'm beginner in coding. Because I'm beginner in coding.
what's that?
Because I am beginner in coding.
Good stuff, man. Keep going. I lost my train of thought. This is why I was asking you guys your goals in the Java channel before I just said this is what you should do. If you know what you want to do, that will kind of help me find you a roadmap to learn what you need to learn, right? Not only would a developer roadmap for web be a really good place to start, I would also highly recommend looking up open source degree, and there'll be two links. The top two are the best ones that I've found. If you go into them, they will be, hey, look, it's GitHub, right? Uh, there will be this long list of classes that you can take. And it will go through the introduction to programming, core programming, math, systems, advanced programming. And they're all free online lectures that you can just go to their website. Some of them are hosted by Harvard, some of them are hosted by MIT. Um, and they're just awesome, right? And if you were to follow these entire degrees all the way through, you would have just as much knowledge as I did when I graduated with my degree.
Okay.
And probably more because I was not a fan of my college.
Okay.
Okay, sir. What is purpose to learn Python? Python. When we use Python language.
Data science, machine learning, very quick scripting. It's very easy to get into. It's probably why you learn it most. Frank asked to Redux or not to Redux. For those of you who don't know what Redux is, it is a way to manage state for JavaScript apps. We messed around with it in React. I think you can integrate it with most JavaScript frameworks. I personally think it's not very clean. You can get around it with most frameworks, like React has. Oh man, what did we use? Hold on. Now you got me curious. I'm gonna go look. I think we had a ticket for it. It'll be in the done column whenever it loads.
Are you know the book of language C or bien language C sharp?
What's that?
Book of language C or C sharp.
Are you asking which one you should learn?
C, language C, coding C.
Are you asking for which book you should read?
Book of language C. If you know any book of language C ou bien C sharp, C ou C sharp.
For C Sharp, I would just use the Microsoft documentation. I personally don't know C very well, to be quite honest. Frank, if you join the OneLeaf Discord, we have a member of OneLeaf. I will send his Discord username in the chat. He would be a great resource for you to ask about front end stuff.
Can you take the link, please? Here,
What's that?
link of the book.
If you go to Google and type in C Sharp MSDN, that will be the book.
Sharp MSDN.
Yep, it stands for Microsoft Developer Network. And this will have literally everything you want for C Sharp.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. For those that were joining OneLeaf, don't forget to put in an introduction. We don't give you full access to the Discord until you do that. The reason we do that is in your introductions, you should give us a little bit about what you're interested in, and that'll help us find you a project and whatnot.
Sir, what's your opinion about the platform of interview?
The platform of interview?
Yes. It is better to learn coding or no?
Are you asking if you should have, if you should do like coding exercises for an interview?
Yeah.
It I personally am not a huge fan of doing it that way. I'm also kind of a lazy person, so I know that's not the best answer. I believe that you should do a certain degree of coding exercises so that way you can understand the core concepts. But more often than not, you'll want to know whatever the framework is that they're using. You'll want to show that you have a passion for programming, that you can learn quickly, and that you know how to use some of the tools that they can use. Those will be more important than just being able to solve a coding exercise. I got my most recent job without knowing any of the framework that they use, but I just showed that I could learn quickly.
And communication.
Yeah, communication is soft skills are huge. If you can't show that you're going to be a fun person to work with, that you're going to have a positive outlook, that you're going to be chill with your manager, those will get you kicked out the door a lot quicker than just not knowing how to program. Because if I were to be a manager, I would much rather have a happy work culture than a super highly productive one, but nobody gets along, because that will kill the productivity anyways.
Yep. And
And
for
and they post a lot of job in this platform.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Alo. Not sure how to pronounce your username though. Is it Halo without the H?
This is the best program for coding, sir.
What's that?
Program for coding. Any program is better.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
so I think just programming and computer science is all about trade-offs and advantages and disadvantages. So there is really no best for anything. I mean, JavaScript's on the web, and JavaScript's the best on the web because it is on the web. But other than that,
You have to pick the
I
right tool
don't.
for the job.
Yeah, I mean, how many different backend languages are there? I mean, any
15.
website that you go to could be anything, and there's no really best for anything. There is always advantages and disadvantages to everything.
Zach, I'm gonna go grab water and go to the bathroom if you want to take over for a second and answer more questions.
All right. Are there any questions?
Bro, I said you are joke.
I'm sorry, come again. I can't understand.
In Morocco,
Mm-hmm.
the programming code we write the programming not on computer. We write a program on uh, on uh, on
On paper?
on paper.
Oh wow. Okay. Jeez.
You know
We had
that?
it. We had to do that in school, and I hated that. Like, ah.
Yeah. Yeah, write a program in paper.
Oh my gosh. Well, that shows you really know it. Like once you can, but oh geez, no, I'm too used to, an IDE like Xcode or something like that to help me.
I love Google too much to just use paper. I'm sorry.
All right, what'd I miss?
ABBB uses paper.
Oh boy. When I
Good.
got my original job as a software engineer, it was for a really big company, and they had to approve me to get access to Visual Studio. So for my first 3 months, I spent all of my time writing out my code on Notepad and on paper until I got access to it, and then I had to transfer it all over manually. And it was the biggest pain because I didn't know if any of it was going to work. I just had to kind of work how I thought it was going to work, and like I don't know, maybe 5% of it worked.
So we have a question in the YouTube from Frank. One more question, if you don't mind. What's your opinion on remote working, and isn't it an option for entry-level jobs?
Ooh.
I don't think I'm just going to go straight out. I think you could get a remote working entry-level job, but it is very tough.
You'd
I
have to have
don't think.
amazing communication.
Yeah, it is tough. And coming from Sabian and I, we've been working remote for a week or two. This is our second week, I think, of
Mhm.
remote working for the situation going on. and it it's weird, and there's not a lot of remote positions, and I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say. So I don't think so.
To add to that, now is a really good time for a senior level to get a job. Because senior levels are like kind of know what's going on. You know, for example, if you don't know how Git works and you're an entry level, how are you going to explain that very well over the phone, right? You kind of almost need someone over your shoulder or at their computer, and you can watch them do it. You could use screen sharing, but that it almost takes so much time, and there's lots of technical issues. They can't really they can't account for your time, right? If you're an entry level person and you are waiting 4 hours for somebody to answer your question and you're on the clock for that time, how can they measure that, right? So it's too much of a risk for a company to take on an entry level developer 100% remote, unless you have absolutely outstanding communication and your boss would probably have you check in like every 30 minutes.
Yeah, and going back just to talk about remote working in general, it's best if you have a space that you can get work done. It's really tough to kind of sit on a couch and work on your laptop. Like having a desk of your own and having your own workspace really makes it easier to work. It can get stressful to kind of just sit at a place and not have like a workstation. But yeah, those are kind of just first opinions of remote working.
Uh, Zach, are you keeping up with updating people's roles in the intros in OneLeaf?
Yep,
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
keeping up with everyone joining if you've joined.
Perfect.
So welcome to OneLeaf if you joined.
What other questions we got, guys? I can keep going until my friends come over, or I'm just gonna go play some RuneScape.
Rocket League, dude.
Oh yeah, we gotta go train. You know what? We can play Rocket League while answering questions, right?
Well, I mean, we are training for a charity thing, so I could stretch it.
I mean, if people don't want to watch the stream, they don't have to be here, right?
Too funny.
Allo, do you have a microphone, by the way, buddy?
Yep, I do.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. You're the owner of the Discord, right?
Okay, thank you, sir.
I somewhat, yes. For the most part, yes. I'm admin.
HTML and CSS and JavaScript to create a website. Yeah,
I'm sorry, you were talking over Allo. I couldn't hear you at all.
create a website.
Uh, I'm not sure what you're asking.
So I can talk about the overall, like kind of what's required for a website. There's multiple different parts to one. So a website is very generic because a website could entail just the front end, just HTML, just HTML, CSS, just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Those are kind of the different front ends. And then you have all the front end frameworks like React, Vue, some of the other ones we were saying like Angular. Then there's also the back end, a server that sends data for calls. So there's multiple different parts of a website. And what I was saying before about JavaScript is always used on every browser, or it's used in every browser. And that's how you get dynamic content on your website. There's other methods, but I'm not going to dive into that. Does that kind of answer your question, or?
And what language is easy? HTML or CSS?
So HTML and CSS aren't really like programming languages. HTML is a markdown language, and CSS is a styling like template.
CSS is
So
styling.
yeah, you'd want to start with JavaScript if you want to go on front end web, or Java is a very good language to learn up front. That's the first one I learned, and I moved away to a different language after I was familiar with that. But there's a lot of languages that you can start. So I'm not good at answering that because I'm biased, and I would say a language that I like. So
Yeah, then we should always in the website we should always put .html.
Yep. Every website will, at the very least, compile their view down to HTML. They could use a different language, but it'll always end up being HTML and JavaScript in order for a browser to be able to load it.
What is your opinion about there are many website non security.
I'm not really a security guy. A lot of frameworks would handle that stuff for you. If you don't have security, that's shame on you, but that's not something that I really work with. Like, if you want very simple security, just make sure that if you have any sort of like logins on your website, that you know, at the very least encrypt them so that way people can't get to them easily.
Yeah, because there are many website are scams.
Yep, there are lots of
Is it
scandals.
sure?
Hmm? Weird. Zach, we may or may not be in a game. What other questions you guys got? I have the stream chat open if you don't have a microphone.
I was grabbing in liquids.
Oh no.
All right, I'm here.
It's okay, I was lagging anyways.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any questions or anything, or if anyone has any topics that they just want us to talk about.
I guess I got a quick question. What would you guys say are some of the more important role functions to understand about programming in terms of like systems thinking? For example, like why would I use a for loop here versus a I don't know an if loop, or why would I want to send my data this way versus that? If that makes sense.
That's a great question. Um, that is a really hard thing to put into words because it's almost intuitive, right? One of the easiest ways to think about it is you kind of one of the things you'll learn from that clean code book that we mentioned earlier is how to break down your code into very manageable chunks. Um, if I were to use like an old adage, I would say, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." Right. So if you were to say, okay, one of the most simple examples that Zach and I usually bring up is how do you make an app that is a temperature converter, right? Like from Fahrenheit to Celsius, right? So you'd have a a text box that has a number in it, right? That is whatever you put, like whatever input you put in there, and then you'd have a button that you'd hit, and then when you click that button, some event would happen, right? That would cause the function to be called that would convert the whatever's in the text box from Fahrenheit to Celsius, right? So if you break it down into that small of a process, then you just have to determine should that process be done one way or another. And that comes down to your knowledge of data structures and algorithms. So let's take, for example, if you were to store a temperature, if you just start at the very most basic example, how would you store a temperature as a variable? Well, it wouldn't be a string, it would be an integer, right? Like in degrees, right?
All right. Yeah.
So then you'd say, okay, well, I need to convert that temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius. Well, that's just a simple mathematical operation, right? There's no for loops or while loops, right? But you would have to have some way to check whether or not you're currently in Fahrenheit or currently in Celsius and toggle between the two, right? So
Yeah.
you need some sort of global variable to hold on to that piece of state. I feel like I half-ass answered your question. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I mean, more or less, I get what you're saying. It's just kind of a loaded question to answer. I guess my next question would be, so how do you assess whether or not something is worth programming? For example, like a lot of people, I don't know, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, but I'll start out and have an idea like, oh, maybe I could do that in a code or
Mhm.
some sort of script or program or something like that. But then you're thinking like, I don't know, maybe is it even worth doing that? Is there something simpler or maybe some other GUI option that's already out there? How do you go about saying, you know what, that's actually worth my time trying to make an app out of?
A few things come to mind instantly. In the business world, the first question you'd ask is, would it make money? So it wouldn't have to be a product that you could sell. It could make you more efficient, right? If I keep some sort of payroll tool or a time management tool, that would save me money on people lying about their hours or me having to pay an accountant or a payroll person. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to have an innate reason. It could just be you want to. For example, like me making games. It's not because it's going to make me money. It's not because it's necessarily going to make me a better programmer. It's because I want to do it. A side effect may be that it makes me a better programmer, but that's not, a definitive answer.
That's the
Um,
best reason though,
yeah,
because I
exactly.
want to.
Exactly. But, for the reasons are different for personal and for an organization to make that decision. So for a company to make that decision, it would probably be driven by monetary decisions as well. Oh, that was so close. As well as necessity, right? Like, let's say you've come to find that several of your employees are lying about their hours and it's costing you millions of dollars a year. And you have no way to track that other than just straight out accusing them. Well, if you have a time management system and I don't know, you put a GPS on their phone or something, that would be a solution to that problem, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Secondarily, let's just talk about, I don't know, payroll, right? You need some way to keep track of your accounting and whatnot. Well, a program would be a great way to do that because it'd save you time, but you could also do what people have done for centuries and just do it by hand.
Hmm.
It depends on if you want to pay for that cost and reap the rewards of the efficiency that it gives you, or do you want to just keep doing it the way you do it because it's the way you know how to do it. It doesn't cost you anything extra.
Okay. And last question: how viable is it to focus on like basic languages like HTML, CSS, and stuff like that, JavaScript, versus what seems like the kind of progression towards automating systems and people wanting more machine learning, data analytics, data science, and stuff like that? Like, can you speak to that?
So I wouldn't bother learning any of the crazy stuff at first, right? Because it's just
Oh
going
yeah,
to
no.
slow your progression, right?
Mhm.
I would not recommend HTML and CSS unless it. So those aren't really programming, right? There's no logic to them. I mean, you can do some logic, but that's not what they're made for. Um, JavaScript isn't really a basic language; it's just a different type of programming. It's functional
Yeah,
instead of like object oriented.
yeah.
Um, so I would start with one that I would weigh a few factors. I'd weigh its longevity. Is it going to be still useful by the time you have a mastery of it, right? Is it going to be around in 5 years? Well, that question can be really hard to answer, but it's something to take into account.
Okay.
Something else that you should weigh is, um, how many oh my god, I'm bad. How many job opportunities there are for it? If there's no job opportunities for it, why would you want to do it?
Okay.
And that can be relative to where you live. So like, there may not be any Java positions where you live. There may not be, a big enough company to have an enterprise level application. There may just be, small little websites. Um,
What is the better website to learn the basics of coding? The basics.
I'm in the middle of answering a question. I'll get to that after. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Um, so if somebody were to just say, I want to learn programming, what language should I learn? My first thing I would ask them is, okay, what do you want to do? 95% of the time, I get one of three answers. I want to do it because it's fun. I want to do it because I want some sort of technical skill, or I want a job. Well, depending on which one of those you want to do, then I have to ask follow-up questions. Well, if you're just doing it for fun, what do you find fun? Well, if you were doing gaming, I could give you a few options. If you wanted to make websites, I could give you a few options, and so on. So really, it's 100% reliant on your goals, and I feel like we keep rehashing that out, and it doesn't 100% make sense. But it really is 100% reliant on what you want to do.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool.
So if
Thanks,
you
man.
if you have some specific goals, and then you want me to answer what would be right for your situation, I'd happily do that. But that might be fit for another time or another platform.
I agree. Cool. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No
You guys
problem.
been awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I gotta go. I just want to say thanks for teaching me Git.
Yeah, no problem, buddy. Feel free to reach out on Discord or whatever.
For sure.
All right, ABBB, what question are you asking, buddy?
I ask what is the better language? What is the better website to learn the basics of language of coding? For example, for learn C sharp or C, the language general.
What would be a general language that will let you do everything? Is that your question?
The best website to learn.
Oh, the best website. Oh, I wouldn't say there's any one. Most people learn in different ways. Like some people may learn better from YouTube, some may learn better from a book. I really can't speak for how you learn best. I'd try out as many. I'd Google how to learn C sharp and try a bunch of different websites and pick the one that fits you best. Because some people's writing styles may impact it. You know, if they're more informal and joking in their way that they write, it may make you more interested and read quicker. So it really depends.
There academy online.
What's that?
Academy online on coding.
Is that a specific one that you're referencing?
I ask, are there some academy online?
Oh yeah, there's tons of academies online. Free Code Camp is the one that comes to mind.
So we have some questions
Yep, I see that.
from the YouTube chat.
Sorry, I'm trying to. Yeah,
You want me to read them
yeah, go.
while we
I'll
play
defend. I'll defend.
Sure, well, all right, cool. So what types of languages are most requested by the job market?
Ooh.
I can say
Yeah, go for it.
that there's always going to be new languages coming up. I would say the top 2 languages that I think of are JavaScript and Java, just being from the numbers.
Actually,
What about you, Jay?
the language that has the most job recs open in the U.S. right now is actually .NET. So C sharp.
Oh. I would also say Python too.
Yep.
But
So somewhere if you're doing web, it could be Java, it could be JavaScript, it could be C sharp. It kind of depends on where you live, but those are probably the bigger ones. Python would be more common for more sciencey stuff. So like if you worked for NASA or something like that. I'm a beginner, passionate about C sharp, and I like code. How do I decide what field I should delve into, whether web or mobile or embedded? Well, yeah, go ahead.
My first thing to find out what was fun for me was obviously like what did I like using? What did I enjoy the most to use? I liked games, so I was first thinking that I wanted to make games because I like to play them. I like the whole interaction of them, and then later on I also found that I liked apps, so I kind of switched over to that. But that's at least my little 2 cents on that. What about you, Sabian?
It is 100% a personal decision. What factors you find most important, are kind of relative. I know some people that chose Python because they had jobs in their area. They didn't really care. They just thought it was a job and they weren't doing it in their free time. That's okay. I mean, you can't fault someone for that. But at the same time, someone like me, I chose C sharp because I like doing games, and Unity was something that I learned quickly. If you want to pick, sorry, go ahead.
Really quick, Frank says he's about to jet. He asked, do we do this often? And I just really want, before anyone leaves, we do this every Thursday for the oneleif stream. We take any ideas and we just talk about them and try to answer and
yeah. So if you guys come into the oneleif Discord, we have a streaming channel. You can post your requests for what we should talk about in there. It can be a bigger topic more than just like a question. You could ask, I don't have anything off the top of my head, but you could ask some more in-depth question that we could prepare for.
We've gotten a ton of questions, and we also talk about like working from home. We've had that, and then also like what does open source mean?
Interview prep,
contribute, and interview prep.
Yeah.
And just many other things. So yeah, every Thursday on the same channel on YouTube. So sorry.
Yeah, on the channel that you guys are watching right now, we stream every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Hello.
Just a casual little karaoke.
Oops, sorry, multiple people are talking.
What is the better is learn yourself or you learn in university?
It depends on the person.
Yeah, it depends on the person. University really helped me, but like professionally, I learned everything by myself. They didn't teach any mobile development in the university.
Because university is
Oh, it's so good. No! Damn it! All you here.
Whoops.
Got it. Uh-oh. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, I'm all tabbing. What other questions we got, guys?
thank you for this information.
No problem, buddy.
Hello? Hello?
Hello? You cutting out?
Oh, do you have, I don't know their name. Do you have someone muted?
Oh, yeah. Somebody was echoing earlier, so I had to mute them.
What's your opinion, sir, about batch file or a batch?
Batch files?
Batch file is it mean to make a verse or what?
I don't use them a whole lot, to be honest. They can be useful for organizations that don't have another way to create scripts. Was Piotr asking the question?
Yeah.
Could you repeat your question, mate? Oh my god, I'm so bad.
Are so bad in coding.
Wow.
Just gonna carry you with me.
That's too good.
Dude, I am playing like absolute garbage. Oh, the pitch.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Victoria. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am good. Thanks. Where are you from?
We are from Nebraska in the United States. The most boring place on earth.
I am from Poland.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, that's
From
awesome.
Zoki.
Yeah.
We have a guy on oneleif from Poland.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Polish people have the
You
coolest
are
names.
Victoria?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
People are a language very hard to learn and very hard to read. Polish language.
Interesting. Maybe that's why a lot
I
of them
am
speak.
learning English.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You are
I am
from?
difficult to speak in English because our country is speak in French and Arabic, so we have a language English and French.
What were you saying, Victoria?
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Please repeat.
I wanted to know what your question was going to be.
I am listening to you.
Do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to say hello.
Are you using a translator?
No, my boyfriend is
Ah,
helping me.
gotcha.
Nice.
So a real life translator.
Bro, what is the best program to learn coding? Program to learn coding. Or to practice coding.
Codewars.com.
What? Says it?
Codewars.com. It would be a great place.
Code words.
Mm-hmm.
Come. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
It is the best. Codewords.com.
There is no best. There's just a lot of options.
It is the best. The website we have learn and practice. All the same.
There is no good answer to that. There's lots of options. You just have to look around and find what works for you.
Abby, where are you from?
ABBB, she was asking where you're from.
Morocco, sir.
Where? Excuse me?
It is difficult to speak English because I learn English from um, 2 years or 1 year in school, but I practice now. I practice this language because I love English.
Where are you from? Okay. It is too hard question.
You have a channel YouTube.
Excuse me? Okay. Never mind.
Oh, somebody pinged me in coding problems. Zach, can you take over here and we should switch to unranked.
Yeah, I can take over.
Okay,
Go.
cool. Hey, Ambit, in your experience, do interviewers care about time/space complexity, or is the solution passing test cases enough to pass? So I did interviews with Amazon, Google, Uber, and a few others that aren't coming to mind right now for whatever reason. So what you want to do for step one is just get your code working, prove that you can come up with an algorithm that will solve the problem that they're proposing. Oh, that was a pro. And then once you do that, then they'll typically say, okay, now you've made it. How can you make it better? And that's where you could, like, usually in my experience, when after I finish the solution, we're running low on time, and they'd say, what would you do? And I'd say, oh, I'd switch from this data structure to this data structure, or I'd refactor it to, instead of looking for one item at a time, I'd do a binary search, or basically you did the simplest solution first, but you basically just have to convey that that there's other solutions that are possible and would work better. They do care about it, but it's not. It's one of the primary things they're looking for. Let me put it that way. Anything to add on that one, Zach?
Yeah. I'll just reiterate what you kind of said of getting the basic, brute force solution, and then understanding the time complexity on just the easiest solution. And then after you've stated the time complexity of what you've done in the coding interview, normally you talk about what you could improve on and what that would bring the time complexity down to. That's pretty much what I've stuck to for talking about time complexity and space complexity. I'm not the best at it. It's just practice and practice. Doing katas, like Sabian said on Code Wars, is a great way to get an understanding of time complexity for the kata and the solution, but then also space complexity, because a lot of places are asking, okay, how many variables did you use, or like don't instantiate any reference to a new object, or so there's different ways on time and space complexity.
Are you here?
Hmm?
Hey, bro. I have a question.
Mhm.
When you start coding
About 6 years ago.
6 years ago,
So I believe it was my second year of college.
have very experienced.
Yep, I spent a lot of time learning programming in my free time.
And how you start this?
Just watching videos on YouTube is how I learned the majority of it, and then just started researching on Google.
You make this code in job or
I learned programming for probably 2 years. No, less than that, year and a half, and then I got my first job in programming. Oh, sorry.
So, are you working
I,
for
I,
some project?
you said
Project?
2 years you have job in what? In programming.
I'm gonna answer Victoria's question. Um, I do have a job working on a project. If that was that your question, Victoria?
Yes.
Okay.
So, are you work from some project?
Am I working from some project?
For
Yes.
what?
What is the
Other.
project? I'm working on a website that keeps track of um, financial information for big companies.
What's its name?
The name of the company is LTI Solutions.
Okay. Yeah. You are alone
No, my company has about 400 employees.
of programmers?
I think of programmers, maybe 20 to 30. The rest all deal with the business.
Okay.
Have associate in this programming.
What's that?
Have associate you make associate in programming.
I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm sorry.
A company in programming you make a company.
Oh, I did not make the company myself, no. I work for somebody else's
Just you
company.
work in each company you work it.
What companies have I worked for? Is that your question?
In company you work this and programming in.
Oh, I use C#.
This and we have a profit or no?
What's that?
We have profit. You have the profit in coding or no?
Do I make a profit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big profit or
Oh yeah, programming
small
makes a
profit?
lot of money.
You guys,
Yeah, no problem, buddy. What's up?
I have one question.
Yeah, go for it.
Like, I have the biggest problem in my programming. It's like I started, 2 years ago. So the basics of problem is like I'm interested in everything. So it just breaks down my productivity. So I don't, and I know that I don't have time to learn everything. So but I don't know what. Basically, I don't know what, which one interests me the best.
So in that case, I'd recommend trying as many things as you can, so that way you can figure out what you like, right?
Yeah, it's like I have done some projects in like React, but basically I have in college I have now it's project in Angular and backend it's Spring Boot. So that's the main thing that I'm going now. But I didn't find anything till now that interests me the most, you know.
Mm-hmm. Personal projects are a great way to figure out what you like. Just doing a small project on your own.
Yeah, I did some React application, Angular JS, JavaScript, Java projects, Python, but that don't it's not like the biggest project. It's like the small ones
Yeah, small
that
projects
I
are great.
learned in. And
You got to start somewhere, right?
sorry, it's not my English is not my main language, so
You're doing a great
sorry
job.
for mistake.
I'm impressed that you can convey your ideas in English because I do not have a second language. I know English and a little bit of Spanish.
Yeah,
Very
that's my name.
to speak in English.
What were you saying, sir, before ABB talked?
Is it better to say English to speak English?
Is it better? It depends where you live.
I have difficult to speak this language. I love this language, but I have the difficult. What I do?
I by no means am good at languages, so I would probably not be a good person to ask.
Because the language of coding is English.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Then I am interested for this language. Very
I
interesting.
yeah, I wish there was a better solution. Sadly, the majority of programming is done in English.
And bit how, how old are you?
23.
What's i- what is your name?
Sabian.
Okay. Sabian.
Yep.
Said you're 23.
Yes, sir.
Oh my god. I'm like 22,
Uh,
and I think I'm late in programming, and it's bad.
Zach started programming when he was like 15, and I was behind him, so you can catch up.
Yo, I was in the medical field, but I really liked computer and all that stuff. So I just switched my careers. I don't know if I can call it career. So I just wanted to learn this, and past 2 to 3 years I'm learning programming, and it's doing well.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, there's never it's never too late to switch once you find out what you love doing, you know?
Yeah, that's what was the reason that I was depressed, because I thought that I was late in something, but it's never too late, so I'm just learning new stuff.
The best advice I can give you is don't compare yourself to other people. Compare you to yourself in your past. Compare you like
That's the main reason. What the main problem is that I most of the time I compare to myself to some other person. So it just I think it's my life and another person is their life. So we everything.
yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. You'll get to the point that you want to. Sadly it may be later than you would have liked, but you can still get there.
You are 2 years older than me.
I am what?
2 years older than me.
Interesting. You sound very young.
I'm 21.
Oh, what kind of work for hacker? What kind of work for hacker?
Uh, from what little I so hacking isn't what the movies tell you. A lot of it is running tools to find security flaws and then figuring out what you can do with them. So it's a lot of knowledge of very uh, random things that help you be a hacker, as well as knowledge of how to use tools that make it easy to understand what's going on.
Well, I don't think is it. Are you professionally called a hacker, or you're a security like
Yeah,
you're an
because
analyst?
I am a lot of book for hacking because I said to hacking is security or for hack any any account in bank PayPal or like this.
I haven't done hacking
For
professionally, so I
example,
can't provide a
spammer.
lot of
For example,
information.
spammer. For example, spammer.
So sorry, what did you say? I have an example of like professional like hacking, if you want to call it that. I'll just go into that. There's a thing called pen testing or
Penetration.
penetration testing for software testing, and I worked on a bank app, and that needed to have like verified and actual pen testing from a company to make sure it's secure. So that's like a form of hacking where I'm talking about like the security standpoint of it, where someone's given an application, there's parameters, there's a contract, and then they try to break it and find any weaknesses in the software. So that's pretty much what a hacker would do. There's white hats, gray hats, and black hats, and all those, and it's just if you can hack at home, do you report it and anything, or do you exploit it? And that's pretty much what the hats. If you're a white hat, you'll report it in and not exploit the hack or the exploit. But if you're a black hat, then you know obviously it's more of a
And,
bad
and
hacker.
and is it simple to hack any software security?
No,
For example, Kaspersky antivirus.
Not without a lot of knowledge.
no. So how the antiviruses work, I'm pretty sure a lot of it is based off of prior knowledge of how viruses were infecting or how viruses ran or where they're located or files made. It's like the saying is if you've made it, most likely it can get hacked in some way, unless you're doing just like a static web page. But there's almost always a way to hack something, and I say almost because there's some places where it's like if you have a computer not connected to the internet and isolated off, then oh, that's a little bit harder to hack.
And there's not always a traditional way of hacking things. Maybe you need to, steal somebody's phone to be able to hack them, or steal their RFID card or, send them a fake email. Hacking isn't always, typing into a command line and, finding a vulnerability in their firewall. There's a lot of options when it comes to hacking. Hacking really just
Yeah,
means using things.
they hack,
What's that?
yeah, they hack any account email. Yeah, yeah. Said they hack any email account it's any hacker he sent a message in email you click on picture or in words or in website you enter a virus on your computer and you hack you.
Yeah.
This is her job for enter
Um,
a PC.
Hold on, I have a bunch of people asking me stuff. One sec.
MPit 17.
Uh-huh.
How do the download your game?
How do I write my game?
Excuse me?
Are you asking how I write my game? Like how I make it?
No. How do download download download?
Keep trying, we'll get it.
download.
Oh, download. Oh. If you go to my repository, give me just a second.
On GitHub?
Yep, on GitHub. Under the releases tab, there's different releases, and down here it tells you how to install it. You click on this .exe if you're on Windows. You download this if you're on Linux. And when you click on it, it'll download like any other game.
Does it
Yes, ma'am.
work on Linux?
It does work on Linux, yes.
I test on Linux. Linux, you need to download it. After you've downloaded it, it should be a zip.
There's instructions for it.
Yeah, but okay. Well,
sorry, I didn't mean
read
to
the
interrupt.
instructions.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just letting her know.
If you unzip it, you go into the folder and then you just need to do a ch mod plus x on it, and then it'll be executable. You can do a / after that. I hope you get all that. But yeah, read the instructions.
Is it true the Linux is very secure than other systems?
I think Mac is the most secure, to be honest.
Mac's probably the most secure because it's like,
because many people said Linux is very secure.
You'd have to set it up to be secure.
It's easier to write viruses or exploits for Windows than it is Linux.
Yeah, Windows is the least secure by far.
So that's why Linux has the least, because Mac is based off of Unix, which is like a fork of Linux in a sense, or the other way.
They said the MacBook is easy to hack. It is easy MacBook.
It is the opposite. It is very hard.
MacBook, it is very hard.
Yes.
You can hack it. I think there's a misconception of it is unhackable. You can still hack it. So yes, it is easy to hack. But in that sense, then everything is easy to hack. The amount of exploits is the factor, because, like I said before, you can hack everything. People have hacked like little Palm Pilots to the actual computers and that stuff.
The
like
electrical components of cars can be hacked.
I mean, you can root an Android and you can jailbreak an iPhone. So also those are exploits that. But it's the amount of exploits is kind of the factor.
Correct.
and there's just more viruses, and that's why you have to run an antivirus scanner, antivirus protector on Windows, but you don't really need to on Mac. You can still get viruses on Mac, and you really don't need one on Linux because you install all the software you need on Linux. But yeah.
And because I know my friend have a computer with Windows 10 and Kaspersky security, and they hacked this her computer.
That is possible.
With Kaspersky possible.
It is possible, yes. No antivirus is perfect. They have to update it like every week with new
Well, an
exploits.
antivirus really only scans. Like the way you get a virus is by downloading it. Like it's kind of rare. I mean, it's rare that an exploit like just can magically. There are exploits that exist that are like that. That are like if you get an IP, then if you have software that's downloaded that has an exploit, it's mainly that's how you get hacked. It's not just like any computer can magically just be hacked. But there are cases. But what I'm trying to get at is it's always an exploit on some software operating system, something you have downloaded, other things like that.
Yeah, I am like me. In my computer, I have a very problem. I have an antivirus in my computer, but I am not install this antivirus program antivirus. How can I delete this antivirus? Because when I enter in task manager to disable, he can't disable the antivirus, and he can't uninstall it.
That's not a question that's easily answerable over the phone. You'd have to go in and disable the Windows service, which is not for the faint of heart.
Because I install program in my computer, and antivirus install, and I am not I am I can't say what is happened on my computer because antivirus I am not install it.
If you bought the computer from some company, a lot of times it'll come with an antivirus. So you can just reinstall Windows, and that's an easy way to get rid of it. Probably the easiest way to get rid of it. It's also the easiest way to get rid of a virus.
Because I know when you enter in task manager, you can disable any program. Yeah,
You can kill the program, but your operating system can start it right back up.
but the antivirus program I can't I can't disable it. I can't uninstall it.
Yeah, there's lots of programs that
I
you
can't
can't on
delete it in
Windows.
my computer. I can't delete it in computer. What I do?
Uh,
The
get
problem we do.
get a fresh install of Windows.
Ah. And what is a problem when my friend he have a computer, but it is uh, it is so difficult to enter in system when you restart the computer is very hard to enter in a desktop and you work in a computer.
I am not sure I understand the question.
Give.
Break down
Can you?
break down the Windows 10.
ABBB, you are. I want to be nice about this, but you're very bad about interrupting people. It would be much nicer if you would let people finish their sentences, please.
Can you give me a link to your game?
Yeah, I'll send you one.
Okay, thank you.
We may have to end the stream here, Zach, and go handle the new influx of people and get them situated.
Yeah, probably.
I'm actually gonna end the stream here unless anybody has any last questions. If you
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah, go for it.
So, the question is like, first paycheck you get it. It's like, I mean, I have some requests from my friends to do some project in programming, like to do web page, but I don't know how many money to take for that page. So I mean, I want to do that for experience, but at least I want to make some money, but not that much. So
I can hear you.
He asked how much money should he request for an application that he's working on.
yeah,
A good answer to that is to look at what people in your area are being paid, right? So go look at what a company near you is charging, and take some away from that, right? If a company's making $100 an hour, but you can't produce your software as fast, then you're not worth $100 an hour, right?
that-
So you kind of have to compare yourself to other people. Also, if you have a relationship or a friendship with the entity that you're working for, you might be able to negotiate it and basically ask them what they think your time is worth.
okay. So to pay for an hour.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Anybody else have any questions before we stop the stream? You got until this game is over because I don't want to alt tab.
There you go.
Why are there
Red
red and green
square.
squares?
Where at? Where? What are you referring to?
You game.
Oh, the green means you've completed it.
Oh, okay.
What's happened in United States?
What's that?
What happened in United States about coronavirus?
Uh, what happened with it?
Yeah, it's I have a lot of cases. That is
That's also we have the
destroyed.
most confirmed cases because we have the most tests. Many countries have just as many cases but can't afford to test as many people.
Coronavirus in your area?
It is indeed. Yes.
Yeah,
We have a lot of it
yes.
because we have the hospital where they take people when they have it.
hmm And also the Air Force Base that got quarantined
Yep.
for the
Take
cruise people.
people.
No. What'd you say?
No.
Hospital can take people about the hospital can take people. Is this true?
Most can't, but we have a medical center that's like for tons of research in cancer, and it was also for Ebola. So they're more equipped for it. But yeah, you're correct. I don't think most hospitals you can.
You have to have a
so-
quarantine facility.
yeah, it's yeah.
Because I see the state of New York is the bad state to destroy it in coronavirus.
They have a
Yeah,
lot of people in
it's-
a very small area.
Yeah, it's very
area.
confined there.
And how many cases now?
I have
with,
no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't. We've, like I said, I think before, Sabian and I have been on quarantine, working from home for the past 2 weeks. Everything's kind of being canceled, at least for like sporting events and bars, and we have a 10-person restriction. So there can't be any groups bigger than 10 people. Sorry, Sabian.
Just take me with you.
But yeah, so I mean, pretty, I'd say teen restricted.
The hoop needs to be bigger.
It needs to be 10 feet up in the air and not on the ground.
Or the ball needs to
I
be
don't-
less
I've been-
bouncy.
The cases in USA are very private.
They're very what?
The very dry fade.
Mm-hmm. Oops.
How's Morocco doing for the quarantine? I mean, not quarantine. Sorry, we've been stuck in it for a while, so kind of. How's for the virus? What are you guys doing?
We have 314.5 cases and 23 deaths and 11 recovered.
Okay.
That is is not good
Yeah. No.
because we have not hospital very development and is it not like USA? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Italy, geez, and other places too. But now it's gonna be. Seems like USA is gonna be in the center of it. So
Thankfully, we have very good medical
yeah, yeah. But we're
centers.
just not prepared for it as like. I mean, the last one was H1N1, right, or swine flu.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is where they win. This is where they win.
I don't have boost.
Have right very information. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep,
I hope
no
everybody
problem.
has a good night.
Yeah, it was nice talking with all of you. We got Ollie A. One last question on YouTube. Are you a professional developer? Both Sabi and I are professional developers, so
Yep.
just answer that quick before we end the stream.
Yep. Zach does iOS development, and I do .NET web development. Alrighty, guys. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to message us. We're on Discord all the time.